Morning. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. My name's Tim Smith. I'm with the Boston Retirement Board. I just want to thank everyone for coming this morning. We've been doing these seminars outside of City Hall for the last few years, and we thought it was past due that we come to City Hall and do one for the folks that work inside the building. The way this is going to work is we'll have an in-house presenter on Social Security, Mr. Frank Zika. We were supposed to have a representative from Social Security, but he had an emergency and couldn't make it. We'll also have a presenter from the SMART Plan, Ainsley Carboni. Ainsley. Group Insurance will be represented by Keith Henderson. And my name's Tim Smith. I'll wrap up with the Retirement Board issues. If you have questions, we'd ask you hold them to the end and then present to the two microphones so that everybody can hear your questions. If you've got a question that's private, you can wait, and I'm going to introduce the staff from the Retirement Board. We'll do a one-on-one counseling session with you if that's what you'd like. We have Michael Collins from the Disability Unit, Indira Mercedes, Member Service Rep, Sandy Lau, QA, Shay Allen, HR, Natasha Thomas, Assistant General Counsel, John McCarrick, Member Service Rep, Eliza Williams, Member Services, Parek Leiden, General Counsel, and Christine Ware, Operations Officer, and Gloria Pizzarella. I saw Gloria earlier. And Anne-Marie Ferry, the most important. So we will hang back as long as it takes to answer one-on-one questions, to answer whatever you may have. Also, many people may not realize, but a lot of the city employees don't have dental insurance at the end of their career. So Jerry Antonti is here from the credit union. He's the manager downstairs. The credit union does offer a dental policy, and he has some handouts and some information on the dental insurance, so Jerry will be available after we're done. I hope everybody got a packet. Inside the packet is the Group 1 chart. So I suspect most of the people in the room are Group 1, typically the administrative positions. We also brought with us Group 2 and Group 4 charts. If you need them, they're over there. Most of the information that we're going to discuss today are for members whose membership is prior to April 2012. If you're a newer employee, there's newer rules, but just judging by the crowd, I think we'll be safe. And you're lucky, believe me. So we're going to start off with Frank Zika in Social Security.
Good morning. Good morning. You might hear me talk about your monthly retirement allowance, or you'll hear about your monthly pension. When you retire from the City of Boston and you're at 70 or 80% of your high 3-year average, as Tim had said, anyone that has employment prior to April 2nd, 2012, your retirement will be based on your high 3 years of service. After that's on your high 5. And so your retirement allowance is made up of 2, 3, or 4 components. So you get, let's just say you're at 80% of 50,000, which would be 40,000. Your retirement allowance will be made up of annuity, pension, maybe a veteran's allowance, and after you're retired 1 full fiscal year, a COLA, cost of living adjustment. So when we talk about Social Security, we're going to talk about your entire retirement allowance in its total. Sometimes I even say your monthly pension, but it's everything included when Social Security asks. So that's the one thing I just want to clarify, that when you get a monthly check from the City of Boston when you retire, your retirement allowance, Social Security is going to want to know what the total is, not just the pension component of it. So what I want to talk about is what you will get from Social Security and what you won't get from Social Security. We handed out, there's 3 pieces of paper, one that's green colored that says windfall elimination provision and government pension offset. We also have an additional sheet that says GPO and WEP, and I'm going to refer to that because I call that the Reader's Digest version. We've been doing this, I've been doing it for over 32 years, and to read all that, it comes down to about 4 sentences, and I'll be here afterwards to answer any questions that you might have. So the government pension offset is you, the government employee, collecting Social Security benefits off of your spouse's Social Security earnings. So if you, the City of Boston, are the government employee and were married or are married or divorced and were married for longer than 10 years, you would be entitled to half of your current spouse or a former spouse's Social Security benefits if you were married for more than 10 years. But there's a couple of rules that come into play which many of you will not be able to collect anything off an ex-spouse. I hate to give you that bad news, but in preparing for retirement, it's our job to let you know what you should be, what you will be getting, not hoping what you would get. If you work past your full retirement age, and prior to 1954, everyone's full retirement age is 66 years of age. Anyone born after 1960, it's 67 years of age. And in between 54 and 60, it's 66 in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, depending on if you're born in 55, 56, and so forth. So your full retirement age, and I'm not guessing on anyone's age here, will either be 66 or 67, and we'll refer to that as the FRA, full retirement age. If you are working past your full retirement age, you can go into Social Security and collect off of your spouse half of their benefit if they're of 62 or older. A deceased spouse, if you're at full retirement age, you can collect your City of Boston weekly earnings if you're actively employed, and there'll be no offset. So I don't make the rules, but they sound backwards. So if you're making $60,000 working here, $50,000, $40,000, $100,000, and you're eligible for $1,000 or $13,000 or $15,000 or $2,000 off a spouse or an ex-spouse, you can work and collect if you're past your full retirement age. Then you decide to retire. That's where the rules change. So the second bullet item here says, if working in your government position past your full retirement age, there is no offset. When retired, if your Massachusetts pension or your City of Boston retirement allowance is more than $4,000 per month, you cannot collect any cash benefits off your spouse's earnings. The formula here, and it'll tell you all about it on here, but I try to break it down simply, is you take your government pension divided by 3 times 2. 4,000 divided by 3 times 2, I haven't done it a little bit, is a little over $2,600. If you are married or your spouse or ex-spouse is a max Social Security earner, the most anyone could collect if they started today in Social Security is $2,682 a month, of which if you married more than 10 years, you'd be eligible for half of that, which would be $1,340 a month. So if your spouse is deceased and you are eligible for $2,600, you wouldn't collect any of it because the offset, your government pension divided by 3 times 2, is $2,600. Now let's say someone's pension, and I keep saying it because I've been saying it for 32 years, your monthly retirement allowance is $2,100 a month, and divided by 3 times 2 is $1,400. So if you're eligible for $2,000 off an ex-deceased or current, I shouldn't say current, but a deceased spouse, $2,000, it would be $2,000 minus 2/3 of your government pension, $1,400. You could collect $600 off a former spouse or current spouse. If you are not eligible for any cash benefit off a spouse, the last bullet item, you will be eligible for Medicare Part B off your spouse if married for more than 10 years. And I will let the Health Division talk about the Medicare Part B, but it's a very valuable health insurance benefit when you're past 65. In a Reader's Digest version, Medicare Part B today, the new rates for 18, calendar year 18 will be coming out the middle of November, but Medicare Part B is $134 a month for you, and that entitles you to Medicare A and B. And then you would get a supplement plan, which Keith will talk about in a little bit, and I can tell you it's reasonable. I think it's the best in the state and maybe the best in the country, the plans offered here. If you talk to any retiree that's over 65, I don't think anyone complains about co-pays, deductible, because there's very little, if any. So that's government pension offset. You, the government employee, collecting Social Security benefits off your spouse's Social Security. But most of you will fall under the windfall, and I don't make up these acronyms, windfall elimination provision, commonly referred to as the WEP. And it's you, the government employee, collecting Social Security benefits off of your own work history, your non-City of Boston work history that you paid Social Security taxes on. So on this windfall elimination provision sheet from Social Security, on the back, that's really the telltale sign. You can go on to ssa.gov, sign in or create an account, or some of you has actually come up to me beforehand and have a printout of your work history that tells you what your year-by-year Social Security taxed earnings are.
1 second. Has everyone in the room created their own account online yet with Social Security? No? Yes? Everybody should do that. I strongly urge you do that today. It's a great way to keep track of your records at Social Security. Sorry, Frank.
Nope, that's good. If you can beat this chart 30 times, which some of you can, I talked to a gentleman earlier, one had 25 years, one had 28 years, and I'll explain to you what that means in a minute. But if you can beat this chart 30 times, if you worked for Polaroid before it went belly up in 1982 and you made $6,075 or more, that's 1 year of Social Security's in that year. If you made $6,070, close but no cigar, you get a 0 for that year. So you have to meet it or beat it. They don't do half or prorated years. If you can beat this 30 times, you will collect your full Social Security benefit with no offset. On this little cheat sheet that I handed out, I put the actual dollars you will lose if you are at your full retirement age in 2017. So what's it take to qualify to collect anything from Social Security is 40 quarters or 40 credits. To earn a quarter or credit, it's approximately $1,320. If you work this week, working for Dunkin' Donuts, I just got coffee there earlier, and you made $1,300 this week, 1 week, that would be 1 credit. If you made, call it $6,000 or $5,000 in a calendar year, you would get 4 quarters or 4 credits. You can't get more than 4 in a calendar year. So if you worked for 10 or more years, earning more than $5,000, you would have 40 credits, and you would be eligible to collect something from Social Security. So on this chart, if you worked 10 years and had your 40 quarters into Social Security, the most anyone can lose in Social Security is half of your benefit. A gentleman was here a little bit ago and showed me his chart. It said $840 is what he's entitled to. He had less than 20 years of substantial earnings. He will lose half of that, $420. But if it said $1,500, he would not lose more than $442.50. So that's the most you could lose. If you had 21, 22, and up to 30 years, this is in calendar 17 what you would lose, and if you're not 66 yet and you're a year or 2 or 3 away, these numbers change and go up little by little. How is your Social Security benefit calculated? very similar to a batting average. You get up to bat 10 times, you get 3 hits, you're batting 300. Social Security says, we count your best 35 times up at bat. They take your highest 35 years of earnings, and they develop a factor, and they use the Consumer Price Index, and there's a lot that goes into it, but they base your earnings off of the highest 35. So one of the questions that the Retirement Board gets all the time, is it worth it for me to get a part-time job after I retire or while I'm working? It always makes sense to get a job, if you can swing it, that pays into Social Security to get a minimum of your 40 credits or quarters, and it'll up your monthly benefit. Even if you're retired and decide to get a part-time job, they recalculate every year. So you will get something from Social Security. The most you will lose is 50% or no more than $442.50. And there's a lot more I can say about Social Security with minor children, dependent children, and so forth. But the one thing I will suggest that whenever you go into Social Security, you write down who you spoke to, what information you gave them, and have them sign what you gave them, because we have a couple of jokes that I talk funny, you listen funny. Sometimes the intake person at Social Security might be having a good or a bad day, and you get a little bill 3 or 4 years down the line saying you owe us, and we've seen as high as $42,000 owed to Social Security. Sometimes they are wrong, or sometimes you didn't tell them the right information. So to help bolster your case, if you ever get one of those love letters in the mail, is to have a document of everything you gave them, and there are appeal processes. So visit your Social Security, sign up for SSA.gov, and I will be here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Frank. The next speaker will be Ainsley Carbone from the Smart Plan.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I'm hoping that the presentation will come up on the screen. I do have a slideshow for you guys so that you can follow along. If not, that's okay. Do you guys know how to work?
Is that it?
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so my name's Ainsley Carbone, and I am one of the retirement plan advisors for the Massachusetts Deferred Compensation Smart Plan. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for letting us come in today. I'm here along with my colleague Marianne Cole and Larry Nicotera, and we cover the city of Boston. Our contact information will be available to you guys. We brought our business cards, but also feel free to sign up on our sign-up sheets. We'll either pass them around or just have them around on the table over there before you guys go. Even though I've heard a lot of you are in the SMART plan, it's still so important to meet with us because there are a lot of tools that I'll go over and a lot of things that we can discuss during our meetings that you might not be aware of yet. Okay, so how many of you are in the SMART plan, just so I can get an idea? Okay, a decent amount. Perfect. So this should hopefully be pretty helpful to you guys. Same thing for those of you who are not in the plan. We're hoping to be able to provide you with enough information to make your own decisions when it comes to planning for retirement so that you can have, it's easier for you to plan for retirement and also that you can enjoy your retirement a little bit more. So in the seminar today, we're hoping to discuss some of the do's and don'ts of retirement planning. We want to go over the different ways that we, as the SMART Plan, can help you plan for retirement. And then towards the end, after everyone speaks, we can answer some of your questions, hopefully. So the average retirement age today is 66 years old. One of the most difficult things about planning for retirement is trying to figure out how long to prepare for. So how many years you're going to need to fund in retirement. For those of you who are 66 years old today, the average or the life expectancy for males is 84 and it's 86 for females. So roughly 20 years you're going to need to plan for, hopefully more than that, but we can always go over that when we sit down and do kind of a retirement readiness review. But really simply, it's a long time that you're going to have to prepare for, and there are a lot of things that you can do, a lot of things that we can help you to plan for that. One of them is discussing things like inflation, pension, everything like that. One really important thing, in addition to thinking about how long you need to plan for, is thinking about how much money you're going to need to live on in retirement. You're going to want to ask yourself what you're going to need to budget for. You want to know what lifestyle you want to lead. And those kind of things will be able to give you a better idea of what you're going to need to plan for to replace every year in retirement. Most financial advisors say that you're going to need around 70% of your working income every single year in retirement. So some of you, it may be more than that. Some of you, it may be less, but that's just important to keep in mind. 70% is kind of a very general number. Okay, so that brings us to our next, or our first do of retirement planning. You do need to consider the impact of inflation. The slide up here shows you the impact of an annual inflation rate of 3%, and I believe it's for 20 years. And that just goes to show you how prices can increase over time for some small and big ticket items. Okay, so inflation is a moving target. We have no idea what's going to happen going forward, but in the past, I think we can all agree prices have gone up significantly. So it's safe to assume that that's going to be how it is going forwards. So another important thing about retirement planning is that you can't rely on your pension alone. So the pension is going to be replacing a certain percentage of your income in retirement. Some of you, it may be 80%, some it might be much less. But it's important to keep in mind that the pension does not have too much of a significant cost of living adjustment. So if you're planning for a 20-year retirement, maybe even longer, hopefully longer, then you're going to need to consider the impact of inflation. And let's say if you retire and your pension is going to be $50,000 every year, 10 years down the road, the cost of all goods has gone up pretty significantly. That $50,000 isn't going to have the same purchasing power. So it's really important to realize that, because that's what we're here to help you with, is helping you aim to replace and help supplement that pension so that you can maintain the same standard of living all throughout retirement. Another reason why you can't rely on your pension alone is, as we discussed earlier, the windfall elimination provision. It's going to reduce, or hopefully not, but for the most of you, it will reduce the benefit that you receive from Social Security. Social Security was never intended to be the sole source of income in retirement, but it may be reduced. So it's crucial to create additional income for retirement by saving additionally. Obviously, all of you guys, I'm assuming all of you are contributing to the pension. Another great way that we can help you save in addition to that pension is through the SMART plan. So most of you, it seems like, are in the plan, so I'm assuming all of you are pretty familiar with the way that it works, but just for a really brief overview, the SMART plan is a deferred compensation 457B plan. It's a voluntary retirement savings plan, and like I said, it's used as a supplement to that pension. You can make your contributions on a before tax and a Roth after tax basis. Okay, so the before tax savings. The traditional way that we've kind of always had it is a pre-tax contribution. So with your pre-tax contributions, obviously your contributions are going into the plan before any taxes are taken out. So that'll not only reduce your taxable income, but it's going to help you have more money working for you going forwards for a longer period of time. Something to keep in mind about that is that the contributions and any earnings won't be taxed until you take it out in retirement, or generally at retirement. Okay, so this graph here shows the impact of and the power of saving on a before tax basis versus an after tax basis. It shows it over 10, 20, and 30-year period. I know on this screen it's a little discolored. I'm not sure what everyone else is seeing, but the color on the left, I believe that should be a blue. That represents the after-tax savings, and then on the right it's a red, and that represents the pre-tax savings and how that can grow in comparison over time. So I touched on the pre-tax savings. The second type of contribution that you have the option to do into the plan is a Roth after-tax savings. So with that, you're making contributions to the plan after taxes are taken out. So with that, you're essentially locking in today's tax rate, And then over time, hopefully by the time you retire, you'll have a significant amount of growth in there. When you go to take that money out, you're not going to get taxed on any of those earnings. So the growth on the investments come out tax-free. So you only end up paying taxes on the amount that you contribute when you contribute it. So either way, it's going to be beneficial. Both are beneficial. It's just important to start as early as possible and contribute to the plan. But generally, the after-tax Roth contribution is more suitable for someone who's going to be in a higher income tax bracket in retirement, whereas the pre-tax contribution, the first one I spoke about, that's more beneficial for someone, or tends to be more beneficial for someone who's going to be in a lower income tax bracket in retirement. And just so you guys know, you can contribute to both. We sometimes see people contribute both pre-tax and Roth if they're not really sure. We can always sit with you to kind of give you an idea of what may be more beneficial for you, but just keep in mind you can go back and forth between the two if you'd like to. So for those of you who are not in the plan, it's certainly important to sign up if you can. We do have enrollment forms with us here today, and like I said, we also have sign-up sheets. So the minimum to get your plan started is 1% of your gross income, or $10 every pay period. And in order to be able to contribute to the plan, you do have to be a full-time employee and work at least 20 hours per week. So I went over the minimums to get it started. The maximum that you can contribute to a plan for 2017 is $18,000 a year. For those of you age 50 and over, you can contribute up to $24,000. And then we do actually have a special catch-up provision that will allow you to contribute up to $36,000 for 3 consecutive years. So if any of you have any interest in doing that, I encourage you to sign up, and we can meet with one of our local reps, can sit down with you, and we can discuss how we can go about that. We did actually just have the 2018 contribution limits come out. I think it was this morning, at least we got an email about it this morning. It went up by $5,000. So the annual contribution limit, the $18,000, went up to $18,500. The age 50 catch-up went from $24,000 to $24,500. And then the 3-year catch-up, you're going to be able to contribute up to $37,000 for 3 consecutive years. So one of the great features that the SMART plan does have is the auto deferral increase, and we've seen a lot of people, an increasing amount of people utilize that feature just because it is so helpful for you. It's kind of like you're doing yourself a favor. You can sign up to have your contributions increase on a set date every single year, because most people, I'm sure you can all agree with me that it's really important to increase your savings every year, but not everyone remembers to do so. So we can help you do that. And it's really easy. You can do it over the phone, or you can set it up on the website. It's not anything that you would be locked into. It's just something that we kind of have as a safety net in case you forget to increase your contributions. Okay, so some other benefits of the SMART plan. The SMART plan is really convenient. You make your contributions through a paycheck every pay period, and it happens automatically. That's the only way that you can make a contribution to the plan, just so you all know. The SMART plan is really flexible. Like I said earlier, you can change your type of contribution, meaning switching between a pre-tax and a Roth. You can change your contribution amount on a monthly basis, and then you can also change your investments as often as you'd like. Another benefit of the SMART plan is that it's ongoing. So some of you might not know if you're going to be here all the way until you retire, which is fine. So if you do have any idea, thinking of maybe going to a private sector job or maybe another municipality or city or local government, you can always move the SMART plan with you. You can roll it over from the SMART plan to your new employer plan. You'll just want to check to make sure that they'll accept the funds upon a rollover. For those of you who are in retirement or are close to retiring, it's important to keep in mind that you can leave the money in the SMART plan. And we do have a flyer. I'm not sure if everyone had it, but we can pass it out later. There's a flyer that goes over some of the reasons why someone would want to leave their money in the SMART plan. You can at least leave a portion of it in there just so that you can still benefit from all of the great features of the SMART plan. Okay, so as I said, you can always roll the money from the SMART plan to a new employer's plan as long as it allows for it. And you can also do the same thing the opposite way. So if any of you have a previous employer plan, like maybe an old 401k or an IRA, you can roll those funds into the SMART plan. A lot of people like to do that just because it's convenient. Not only will you receive just one statement, and you can log in online and just see all your information in one place, but for the most part, the Smart Plan fees tend to be very inexpensive in comparison to most plans. So it could end up just being more money in your pocket, but that's something that we can sit down with you and discuss, and we can just do a comparison of both plans. Because if one's cheaper than the Smart Plan, obviously you'll probably want to go there, but we can sit down and discuss that. Okay, so once you figure out how much you want to contribute and which type of contribution, then you'll have to figure out how you want to have your contributions invested. So the first way that you can have your money invested is through our Smart Path retirement funds. Those are target date portfolios, so it's an investment it's a portfolio that's chosen based off of a retirement date. So you would pick a year around when you think you want to retire, and then from there, we would have it invested for you. So today, it would probably be at its most aggressive point, and then every year going forwards, we gradually make it more and more conservative, just keeping in mind that you want to preserve that value as you get closer to retirement and as you get through retirement. The second way that you can have you can choose your investments is by choosing from our individual funds. I don't believe that we have the information on our individual funds here with us today, but they are on our website, and our website's on just about every single flyer that you guys picked up from the table in the front. So you can pick your funds individually. You can essentially be your own portfolio manager if you want to. Not many people like to do that because it is stressful, and that's totally fine. So we do have a way where we can help you with that, and it's through our managed account service. So we do have different levels of advisory services. You'll see the first one, the online investment guidance. That's something where we can just give you very generic and brief recommendations as to how to have your money invested, how much to contribute. So that's if you kind of want to be your own portfolio manager. If you'd like us to help you a little bit with your investments, we do have online investment guidance where we can give you specific recommendations for the funds. And with that service, that advisory service, there's a $25 annual fee. And then the third one on the right, that's our full managed account service. So with that, we can do all the ongoing management for you, so you don't have to really worry about it at all. And with that, there's an annual fee of 0.45% of your account balance, so it's less than half of 1%. Those services are something that you can get into and out of at any time. If any of you are interested in that, feel free to sign up again on the sign-up sheet, and we can reach out to you and set a meeting for a later date. Another feature of our advisory services is the spend down feature. So our tools online that we use, but also you all currently have access to on our website. With that, we can input information, and then we can show you how your income is projected to grow over time, and not just your income from the Smart Plan, but income from all of your other retirement savings. Because it's really important to think of your retirement in a more holistic view instead of saying, oh, this is a portion of my Social Security, this is my pension, this is my spouse's retirement. We can try to keep that in a, like I said, a more holistic view for you so it's a little bit easier. But we can show you, again, how it's projected to grow over time, and then we can make recommendations and show you different ways that you can take from the different income sources over that entire retirement period. Okay, so you guys have all, or most of you who are getting close to retirement, have been working years to retire, so it's a lot of effort that you've put forth. So it's really important to continue managing your assets as you get into retirement. Our goal, like I said, it's to help you aim to replace your working income every year in retirement, and it's not something that we're just going to get you to retirement, wave you off good luck, and then let you on your way. We do want to help you every single year in retirement, and that's what we're here for. So you can, like I said, leave your money in the Smart Plan. Some of you may have thoughts about maybe moving it towards a broker or financial advisor, some sort of outside retirement account. You are able to do that upon separation from service, but it's really important to just keep in mind certain questions that you're going to need to ask, things like fees, fiduciary responsibility, what the different benefits are of the different types of retirement plans. And again, if that's something that's on all of your minds, then feel free to sign up and meet with us, because we can sit down and do a comparison of the different types of plans for you. Okay, so things to consider upon distribution. You can access the money in your plan upon separation from service and retirement. You can also access it upon death. That would be in the case where a beneficiary would file for a death claim. But it can also be in the case of a hardship withdrawal. That's a financial hardship. It's kind of like a last case scenario, but if anyone ever needs to get access to the money because they're in a financial hardship, then you can reach out to us and we can assist you with that. And then, like I said, you can keep the money in the SMART plan, but it's important to note that when you turn 70 and a half, you're going to be required, the IRS requires you to take money out of your account every single year going forwards. And it's a required minimum distribution. For those of you making those pre-tax contributions, you haven't paid taxes on it yet. So essentially, it's the government's way of getting you to eventually pay taxes on that money. We do send a letter in the mail for you when you reach age 70, but it's important to keep it in mind because if you have another account like an IRA or an old 401k, you will have to do it for those as well. Okay, so when you're looking at other retirement plans, it's really important, or even this SMART plan, it's important to keep in mind all the plan fees that can be incurred. There are administrative costs, investment management fees like an expense ratio or an operating expense ratio. There's commission, there can be sales charges, or even a contract charge or surrender charge. So it's really important to keep those in mind. For the SMART plan, we have a very competitive fee schedule and a fee structure for the SMART plan. Everyone in the plan is going to be paying an administrative fee, which is 0.08% of your account balance. That's something that comes out every year. So easier way to think about it, every $1,000 it's going to be 80 cents, which is pretty reasonable, at least I think. So let's see. Also within the SMART plan, we do have the operating expenses, which tend to be a pretty inexpensive operating expense for most of our funds, which is a great reason why a lot of people like to move outside retirement assets into the SMART plan. Okay, let's see. Okay, some other things that are important to think about as you're getting closer to retirement. Most people, as they get closer, they want to increase their contributions, maybe even max them out if you're able to do so. Just so you know, the 457B contribution limit is not included with the 403B and the 401k plans. So if anyone in here is part of the school system, you do have access to a 403B. You can contribute to both a 403B at the maximum and also a 457 at the maximum. If you have questions about that, feel free to come by afterwards and we can talk about that. Another important thing to think about is that you are able to defer your unused sick and vacation time upon retirement. I believe most of you will get probably a lump sum check upon retirement. If you don't want to get whacked with taxes all at once that year, you can defer some of that into the plan, and you'll postpone paying taxes on that until a later date when you take that out in retirement. You just have to keep in mind that the amount that you put into the plan still has to stay within those annual contribution limits. Again, if that's something that you guys are interested in, please feel free to either sign up or come by and meet with us.
Can I just jump in real quick on that? On that point, and I'll get to that when I speak, on average, it takes about 60, maybe even 90 days to get on the pension payroll. So a lot of folks will live off of that, those payouts at the end. So you should budget. It's a great tool to be able to use a SMART plan to put that money away, but you're going to have to live off of some money. So just budget well. I would budget for 90 days when you retire. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you. That's a good point. It is pretty easy to access the money upon retirement, but if you are going to be getting a check or a lump sum from that unused sick and vacation time, it's certainly very important to keep in mind that you might not be receiving that first pension check until 90 days. I've seen sometimes more with the state, but it's a pretty significant amount of time to go for most people without any sort of income, so we can help you try to figure out how much you may need. Oh, another thing to touch on is that for those of you who are interested in maybe purchasing any credible service with the retirement system, you can purchase those years of service through your SMART plan funds. So I would suggest reaching out to the retirement board to figure out if you are able to buy back any years of service, how many years of service, and also you want to think about, or you'll need to know how much it's going to cost for you to buy back that service. Once you figure it out from the retirement board, once you get that letter, you can come to us and we can help you with that transfer from your pre-tax retirement savings into the SMART plan. So keep that in mind. Instead of paying out of pocket, you can do a pre-tax transfer to the retirement board. Let's see, I don't think I missed anything. So you do have access to us here today, Marianne, Larry, and myself. Please sign up if you'd like to meet with us again. Even if you're in the plan, there's so much that we can do for you. There's the retirement readiness review. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to actually be here. I believe it's on the 26th. Larry and I will be here. You can email the email address that I believe was posted on the hub, and that way you can schedule an appointment with us. But feel free to reach out to us individually, and we can set up another time to meet if there isn't an available time at that point. If you don't meet with us, or if you want to increase your contributions or change investments, you can go to our website or contact our plan support team. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainsley. Before I introduce Keith, I just want to point out Barbara Young is here from Group Insurance to answer questions as well. Larry Nicotera is here from Smart Plan, and that was Mary Ann Cole. Ainsley had asked how many people participate in the Smart Plan, and most of the room raised their hands. That's tremendous. What I would ask that you do is when you go back to your departments, try to gently nudge, or not so gently nudge, the young folks to do the same. Because I'm sure you're all well aware of that economic maximum of compounding interest, and you've probably watched your account grow over the years. And if you look back, if you started when you were 22 years old, you'd all be in pretty good shape, and I'm sure you are. But if you could just remind the young people back in your various departments, that would be great. The next speaker is Keith Henderson from Group Insurance.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Thank you for your service to the city. And our primary goal today is to make sure that we provide you with all the information that's going to help you make the best decisions for you and your families regarding health insurance. Obviously, in today's society, we realize how important health insurance is, so we want to make sure you have all the information that's going to be necessary. I'm going to go over an overview of the process as you're considering retiring, of how to continue your insurance, who's eligible, and I'll also touch on the most frequent questions that we get when we do these seminars. First off, who's eligible? If you're eligible for a pension through the retirement board, you are eligible to continue your insurance with the city. It's quite that simple. If you're eligible to collect a pension, you're eligible to continue your insurance. And it's not just you. It also covers any dependents you have on your plan. And I'll get more into the specifics, married, children, so forth afterwards. Will your premiums change? They will not. If you are not 65, 65 is a key number as you're considering retirement, obviously because of the Social Security and Medicare. If you retire before you turn 65, nothing changes with your health insurance unless you change something. So if you switch a plan or if you cancel or whatever, that's your choice. But nothing, only thing that will change with your health plan is instead of it coming out of your paycheck weekly or bi-weekly as an active employee, it'll come out of your pension check monthly as a retiree. The amount stays the same, the coverage stays the same, nothing at all changes. If you're covering your spouse, this is where sometimes it can be confusing for some people, only because not everyone is the same, not every married couple is the same age. Sometimes one half of the couple will turn 65 before the other. Once you're retired, if you or your spouse, whichever one, whoever turns 65 first, or at the same time, so be it, you must apply for Medicare Part A and B, if Part A is free for you. One thing I will encourage you, do not go by the I heard, I thought, I was told. Go to Social Security and apply for Part A and B if Part A is free for you. If you do not have enough quarters, Frank touched on that earlier, Social Security will provide you a letter saying that at that time you are not eligible. So if you're over 65 and you're not eligible for Medicare, nothing happens with your insurance. The same plan you have as an active employee will just continue on the same way. If you are eligible, and I'll go into a couple of different scenarios, let's say both you and your spouse turn 65 at the same time, and you're both eligible for Medicare. We will then put you both in a supplemental plan that the city, one of the supplemental plans that the city offers. We do have plans that are good for the local area, as well as some plans that have coverage for nationwide. Not everyone wants to stay in New England after they retire. Sometimes they want to go to a warmer place. Medicare Part A and B will cover 80%, and your supplemental plan is your 20%. You always have to remember, once you get to that point, when you use services, to present both your Medicare card and your supplemental card, because you don't want to get caught up in billing mistakes and them not realizing that you have a supplemental plan. On the spouses, if you're collecting a pension and you're currently carrying a spouse, and you're both in a Medicare supplemental plan, you'll see the two charges come out of your retirement check. There are scenarios where someone is retired, have a spouse, and have a dependent under 26 still on the insurance. In those scenarios, we will consider you family exempt, which means the same family plan that you carry now, you'll continue that until the child comes off, until the dependent comes off the plan, and then we'll take you and your spouse and split those up into two individual plans. There are no family Medicare plans. Part B, as Frank touched on earlier, Social Security will either bill you or take out of your Social Security check if there's enough there for your Part B premium. The benefit for the employees is 50% of what you pay of Part B is refunded to you the following year. So this past July, we refunded 50% of all our retirees' Part B payments that they made for 2016. I mention that because obviously we had quite a discussion about money and financial management. One misconception I hear a lot is people are thinking that paying Part B and I have to pay the city and, how's this benefiting me? No matter how you do the calculation, it will come out to be less money you're paying for insurance than you're paying as an active employee. There's also penalties. I spoke to someone earlier who is already past 65 and hasn't applied for Part B yet because they're still working, which is fine. Social Security will charge you a penalty every month that you don't have to pay. Whatever your monthly premium is for Social Security, your standard monthly premium, depending on your income, that's all you pay. Any penalty that Social Security charges, City of Boston pays that every month or every quarter. So you're only responsible to pay the regular amount that you pay. Any penalties that Social Security charges you for filing late, for applying late, we pay that. Now, if they're charging you extra because you make a lot of money, that's between you and them. That has nothing to do with us.
Keith, can we just follow up just to make sure? So if you continue to work past 65, you do not get hit with a penalty. It's only when you didn't go into Social Security when you were unemployed.
No, it's if you did not apply within that 6-month window of 65. When you do apply for Part B, they will charge you a penalty.
Okay.
And that penalty we
Some may and may not. That's why we recommend they go to Social Security.
no matter what. That's why, going back to my first statement, no matter what you thought, heard, or someone told you, go to Social Security. Well, there's a 3-step process. Obviously, when you're going to retire, you're going to go right to Tim's office, and he'll touch on how to organize that. From there, you're going to come to the health benefits office, right on the same floor on the other side. And depending on what you've done or have not done at that point, we will instruct you to go to Social Security. We will provide you with any forms you may need when you go to Social Security. We'll make sure we explain everything that is going to be pertinent to your individual situation to make sure you make the best choice for you and your family. I did both 65, 1 over, 1 under. If you turn 65 and your spouse is 62, and they're not applying for Medicare yet, same rules apply as I said earlier. We'll split the plan. You will be on, whoever's turning 65 will be on Medicare in a supplemental plan. The party that's not 65 will stay on an individual plan, which still, as I said earlier, would be less expensive than the family plan that you're probably currently paying now. Unfortunately, at some point, we all will pass, hopefully a long time from now. If you're the retiree and you pass, your spouse is still eligible to continue health insurance. And Tim will touch on this in a few minutes. Doesn't matter which option you pick, A, B, or C. Only thing that determines with your health insurance is how it gets paid for, whether it comes out of a pension check or whether you pay us directly with a monthly billing statement. So if the retiree passes, the spouse always has the option to continue their health insurance unless, unfortunately, they remarry after the spouse passes. A couple of unique scenarios I want to touch on only because I've seen it happen a few times recently. There has been some scenarios where someone has retired and someone resigned, took a few months before they decided to officially retire. If there's a break in service, your insurance does not continue. Retiring does not give you an opportunity to sign up for health insurance. Only time you can sign up for health insurance with the city is as a new hire, a rehire, or with a qualifying event. The qualifying events are marriage, birth or adoption of a child, or loss of coverage involuntarily elsewhere, meaning that if you're on someone else's insurance, you say your spouse, and they retire or they leave their job, hence lose their insurance, they'll provide you with a letter and a COBRA letter saying that you lost insurance at a certain date. You have 30 days from that date to sign up with the city. Other than that, if you're insured with the city now and there's no break in service, it's pretty much a smooth transition. Other than that, I believe.
But we all agree that the Medicare A, B, and the supplement plan past 65 is as good as it gets. It's very inexpensive, and it's great coverage. That's what I think both Keith and I want to reiterate to you. Medicare A, B, and the supplement is great coverage.
If you want to get an understanding of how great it is, especially with all the talk that we currently hear about health insurance, as a retiree, for the majority of the plans that are going to be available, the retiree pays 11% of the premium, which means the city pays 89. So that's how good it is. And just looking at the numbers, the average for a supplemental plan, if you average them out, you're talking about less than $50 a month per person. So $50, less than $50 a month for you, less than $50 for your spouse. So I've done the math a whole bunch of different ways, factoring in the refund and paying Part B, even income related. Unequivocally, it is beyond what I would say a financial windfall for the city employees, which is probably why a lot of us work here. I have a personal belief that there's 3 reasons why anyone does what they do for a living. One is a passion for whatever position they have. One is for obviously how they're being compensated, and the third is the health benefits that come with it.
So Keith, you and I had done that. It's about $1,500 if both are over 65, Medicare A and B, $134, you reimburse them $67 plus the $50 charge. So both people together comes to $3,000 a year. It's actually less than, it's about $2,700 all in, and you can't find any plan that's as good or as cheap as that in the country, believe me. wants to answer that now, we'll wait.
Can you do me a favor and ask that same question up here so everybody can hear you at the mic down here? Just. Well, I think it'll help everybody hear it.
If everyone has the same question, so if they understand the question and we give an answer, it'll help everyone.
But if you don't have to, if you don't want to.
I'll repeat it.
Go ahead.
The question is, what is she supposed to do? If you're 65, do you have to sign up for Medicare? The city does require for you to continue health insurance through the city's programs. If you're eligible, if Part A is free, you must sign up for Part A and B. That's why we reimburse you. And as of July 1st, 2011, Chapter 69 mandated that all cities and towns require retirees age 65 and older to apply for Medicare Parts A and B if eligible. So yes, that would be, unless, I mean, from the math that me and Frank have done, unless you want to pay more for health insurance, I would recommend going to Social Security, signing up for A and B, and then coming to the Health Benefits Office. And if anyone has any specific individual questions, or as Tim mentioned earlier, private questions, we'll be here as long as necessary to answer them. We're upstairs on the 8th floor. You can call our office anytime. Anyone that answers the phone will be able to address any concerns that you have.
And to follow up further on that question, if you are actively employed past 65, the book says you should go to Social Security to check in with them. But if you let them know that you're actively employed, you do not sign up for Medicare Part B because you're actively employed. What Keith just read is when you retire and you are eligible, you must sign up for Part B. So if you're actively employed, you really don't have to do anything but to comfort, because everything you read, because the booklets were written thinking everyone is going to be retired by age 65. But you should, or you could, check in with Social Security 6 months prior to turning age 65 saying that I am working, what should I do? Because again, you want to make sure that Social Security has all your earnings history and so forth. But if you're working, there's not a whole lot you have to do. You're going to stay on the non-Medicare plan as an active employee. Does that answer your question? No. If you were actively employed, and I think Keith said without taking a break, if you're working now and you're 67, 68, 69 years old, and you retire next month and you've had continuous service, you go on to Medicare Part B, you have to prove that you've had continuous health insurance, and if there is no break, you do not get hit with the penalty. It's if you delay. They instituted the Medicare Part B mandatory. A number of people were already well past 65 that did pay the penalty, and the city reimburses the penalty. No.
No. And that was one of the forms I alluded to when I said we'll give you whatever forms that you need when you go to Social Security. One of them is a credible coverage that shows that you were actively working and that you had health insurance, and that was the reason why you didn't sign up when you turned 65. And just to touch on one last thing, the information that I've gone over, the questions that come up, the questions that were asked, if you go to boston.gov/retirees, all that information is right there. All the same questions, all the same answers, and all the same information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. If everybody looks in that packet, we gave a sample calculation for your retirement. Obviously, I'm not going to go over this line for line, but you can noodle that when you get back to your desk. You probably know the three major factors in determining your pension include your age at retirement, your credible service, and what's called your final average salary, or your top 3 years. What I'm going to talk about today is the nuts and bolts of how to retire and what steps you should take. And just to give you some background, the bulk of the operation for the retirement board is up at 816. We have about 34,000 active in retirees. When you include the inactive members, it swells up well over 50,000. We're obviously the largest city board in the state. We have assets of about $6.1 billion. Boston does its own investing, with the exception of the teachers. All the teacher money is at the Pritt Fund. Our rate of return for the last year is 14% net of fees. And we retire about 700 people per year. So I'm going to give you a timeline of the steps to take when retiring. I suggest that at least 2 years out, you come to the board. And that's a good opportunity for you to tune up your account and just lay the groundwork and prepare. I suggest you ask for a statement of credible service. That's essentially the amount of money that you have in your annuity account with the retirement board, and a statement of credible service. That is straightforward. That's how many years of service you have with the city. Once you get those statements, I would go over those with the member service rep and be critical and make sure that you think it comports with what you have for service and money. In fairness to the member service reps, they only know what's in front of them and what's in the system. If you have breaks or if you're on workers' comp, they wouldn't necessarily see that. So if you think something's amiss, I suggest that you speak up and mention that to the rep while he or she is going over that material with you. Bring in some of what we call significant documents. Your DD-214, if you're honorably discharged from the military, birth certificate, spouse's birth certificate, marriage certificate, photo IDs, and if you've unfortunately gone through a divorce and if you have a domestic relations order or a DRO, we would need that, and I'll go into DROs later. At that visit, you may also want to review your file to see if there's any service you can buy. I suggest you do that as soon as possible, even before the 2 years visit, because the interest is running from the date that you did the work. So if you have time you want to buy, I suggest you do that as soon as possible, okay? The second visit is when you know you're going to retire and you have a date in mind. You have to come to the board and fill out what's called the intent to retire packet. It's a 12-page application. It takes about 1 to 2 hours to fill out. You'll sit with a member service rep. Your spouse may or may not be there. I suggest a spouse comes because the spouses often have a lot of very good questions. And you'll go over the entire packet with a rep, and then that's when you're going to pick your retirement date. Now, you can't file this. It can be no more than 4 months out. So within that 4-month range is when you can file your ITR. We suggest you come further out. I mean, you could come in the day of, but we highly recommend against it. Highly, because you'll be one of those persons that are delayed a pension. The more time you give us to prepare for your pension, the better. So if you can hit that 4-month mark, that would be appreciated. If you have a personnel card, did anybody here start in the 1970s? 1980s? So when you started, believe it or not, a lot of the records were kept by hand. Even the annuity records were kept by hand. So obviously we've gone through multiple data conversions. But if your department has one of the old personnel cards, that's helpful if you could bring that with you. Because that would list things like leaves of absence, workers' comp, things of that nature. Also, you're going to be asked to fill out a W-4P, that's an IRS withholding form. You should consult your tax advisor on how to fill that out. The retirement board cannot, nor should you take any tax advice from the folks upstairs. Only you know your individual situations. You may be getting money from the SMART plan, and you may have other income coming in. You really have to do your homework with the W-4P to make sure that with the correct withholdings coming out. You can change that at any time. You just have to refile the form with us. So if you figure out you're not taking out enough or you want more taken out, you can change that any time once you get on the payroll. And as to taxes, the pension is subject to federal withholding. There is no state, meaning Massachusetts, withholding. However, some states do have withholding even on pensions. if you're going to relocate, Florida, South Carolina, wherever, you need to do your homework, because some of those states may have withholding. So if you domicile in some state that does, you'll be subject to their tax laws. Just keep that.
The good news is Florida, there's no taxes, but Vermont, it's somewhere around 9 or 10%, so I wouldn't move to Vermont anytime quick. Keep your residents here, so.
So after you've filed your ITR packet, we'll start the process. At that point, you'll most likely still be working. You'll get a call from the office 60 to 90 days after your effective retirement date. And at that point, that's when you're going to sign what's called your final papers. That's that colloquial phrase, or your option selection. Let's go over the options real quick. When you retire, there are 3 options. A is in apple, B is in boy, C is in Charlie. Option A, that gives you the most amount allowable every month. However, there's no money whatsoever or any benefit left for anybody upon your passing. Some of you folks, I know, have well in excess of $100,000, maybe $200,000 in your account right now with the board. If, God forbid, you got hit by a T-bus the first day of retirement, the city of Boston collects that money. Option B, B is in boy. That allows you to name beneficiary or beneficiaries of your choice to receive a one-time lump sum payout of any monies that are in your account upon your passing. On average, the annuity account spends down in about 10 years. So obviously you want to beat the 10 years. If you live 11 years, there's nothing left. So when you pass, your beneficiaries receive nothing. You can change your beneficiaries anytime, even after retirement. You can have as many beneficiaries as you want. You can give to the Red Cross. You've got a lot of flexibility under B. The final option, and this is a popular one with married people, is option C. That's what's commonly known as the joint and last survivor benefit. That allows a lifetime pension upon your passing to either a spouse, a former spouse who hasn't remarried, parent, sibling, or child, one person. So one of those 5 categories of people you can nominate as your option C. Once you name that person and you start collecting your pension, there's no changing anything regarding your option C beneficiary. Also, once you retire and start collecting your pension, there's no changing your option selection. So when you pick A, B, or C and you're on the pension payroll, that's it. Before I forget, I strongly urge that everybody do a physical before leaving, just so you know you're in good shape. And if you think there's some job-related ailment, you'll want to see Mr. Collins at the disability unit. I'm not going to dive too deeply into disability today, but Michael is here to answer your questions because that's a benefit you have if there's a job-related disability. On that third option, when you're picking your option selection, you need to bring your spouse in if you're married. The law requires a spousal acknowledgement. So at that point, both people will have to come in together to sign the papers, sign the final papers. You'll get your first pension check in about 60 to 90 days. That's obviously retroactive back to your retirement date. As Keith said, I don't know if you touched upon it, but the city will bridge the payments up until you're on the pension payroll. But at that point, obviously, you have to pay them back. So out of that retro check, they're going to get all their premiums back in that first check. I can't implore enough that when you get your intent to retire, walk down and see Mr. Henderson at 8:07 that day. I would not leave the building without doing it. If you do, you're risking your health insurance. So please make a point of going to 8:07 when you fill out your intent to retire. And another thing I forgot about the intent to retire, you'll get 2 copies of the cover sheet. One you're going to bring to 8:07. The second you'll bring back to your payroll people in your department. Don't forget that either, because otherwise we won't have your payroll history, and that will delay you getting on the pension payroll. Domestic relations orders. Unfortunately, there's a lot of divorces in America, and your public pension is considered marital property. What that means is the probate court can divide your pension. If the probate court issued a domestic relations order, we need a copy. And whatever the language is in that order is what we're bound by. Some people will come to me and say, well, the judge said from the bench, my lawyer said this, we agreed to that, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Whatever's in that DRO is what we're going with. If you're in the midst of divorce now, I strongly suggest you work with your probate attorney and go over those terms and fully understand, because it can make a huge impact. If you're in a long-term marriage and you're splitting your pension basically 50%, you can do the math. It's a big hit to those people that didn't pay attention. And I know emotionally it can be a difficult, trying time, but that's one thing you really have to be involved, well, many things you have to be involved in, but particularly the DRO, because that goes on for the rest of your retired life. It's very difficult to amend these DROs. Some people are doing it these days, but usually that's a joint motion. If the other side's against it, good luck. It's my experience. It's a difficult uphill battle. If you have the DRO, we'll need some information from your ex-spouse. We'll need your ex-spouse's photo ID, social security number, W-4P, birth certificate, and direct deposit form. I know in reality, sometimes you're not speaking with your ex-spouse. If that's the issue, let us know. We will communicate with the ex-spouse via mail or phone call. But you need to tell us that there's a problem, that you're not talking to your ex. If we don't have all those documents from your ex, again, that will delay you getting on the pension payroll. Before you retire, there's one thing I want to bring to everybody's attention. There's a benefit called Option D, D as in David. That allows you to leave a pension, a lifetime pension, to a beneficiary should you pass before retirement. Everybody should have the Option D on their file. I have one. I know Frank does. I'm sure everybody in the retirement board has it. Keith's got his. So that allows you to name, it's similar to Option C. You can name a spouse, former spouse who hasn't remarried, parent, sibling, or child, one person as your Option D beneficiary. And if you pass before retirement, that person gets what's your Option C value for the rest of their life. It's really a no-brainer. If you haven't done it, please do it. I suggest you go upstairs today and get your Option D form. Just as an aside, it's very important that you update your beneficiary forms. I've had a lot of cases where folks have come in to retire, and for instance, it was a gentleman who went in the service, came right on the city, named his mother as his beneficiary. He's been married and divorced a couple of times since then, and his mother's still the beneficiary, and she's passed away. So you need to come in and see us. Life happens. People pass, you get divorced. You need to update those files. Employment after retirement. If you go to a private employer, you can work to your heart's content. And as Frank alluded to earlier with the Social Security, it will most likely benefit you. However, if you go to work for a public employer, if you come back to the city for whatever reason, there are hourly and earnings restrictions. You can work no more than 960 hours per year, which is typically half-time, and you cannot earn you can only earn the difference between what your salary pays today and what I pay you in pension. So if you go, just to make the numbers easy, if you're going out at 80%, you can earn that 20% difference. After you've been married, after you've been retired for a year, it's that 20% plus $15,000. So that's a high level nuts and bolts of how the steps you're going to need to take to get on the pension. Everything is preparation. If you come up and visit us, make sure your file's set up, make sure we have all the docs we need. The board has made a huge investment in its pension software, so we're actually paperless. Once that gets scanned into your account, it's there. So if you come up today, for instance, and bring us your birth certificates, marriages, and so forth, it'll be sitting there waiting for you when you go to retire. The last two things I want to point out, and I'm going to turn it over to Park Lydon. There's an issue right now with the annual unused vacation and personal buybacks, as well as anti-spiking. And just to delineate, what I'm talking about are those buybacks you do every year, not the buyback that you do at the end of your career. The buybacks you've been doing year after year after year, we've been including in regular compensation, meaning it's part of your final average salary. The buyout you do at the very end, where they're paying you 20 cents, 40 cents on the dollar, whatever they're paying, that's not included in regular comp. So I'll turn it over to Park, and he'll give you some more details on that.
So basically, Timmy likes to give me the work of killing puppies and butterflies and giving bad news, but it's not all bad news. Very briefly, it's very complicated. Part of pension reform is anti-spiking. It doesn't affect a whole lot of people in the building or in the city of Boston or any of the other agencies, but when it does affect you, it does affect your pension benefits, which, again, as everyone has said, can be for a long time. So you'll want to keep this in the back of your mind when you come up, because the number that you have in mind may not be the number that actually is going to be used for your pension. In pension reform of 2011, there were two sections which dealt with basically spiking. It means that your salary increases astronomically or non-astronomically. One section, section 14, dealt with a 100% jump from year to year. So you have someone in the outliers are where you have someone who makes $10,000 for 18 years and all of a sudden gets a job for $50,000 for 3 years. That section 18 deals with more than a 100% jump in your salary, which good news is you're making twice the money. The bad news is it's not going to count towards your pension fully. The second section is section 18, which it's a little more discrete, and it deals with a greater than 10% jump over the prior 2-year average of your salaries. Now, that's a little more common that we see. You know, and if your average is 50 grand over the past 2 years and you get a substantial raise, you'll trigger that anti-spiking category. Under Section 14, that 100% jump, there's no exemptions to that rule. They're going to use the 5 years last salary, so it kind of smooths out that big jump in your salary. Under Section 18, the one with the 10% rise, which is more common and could happen to more people, if you don't get a raise for a few years and then all of a sudden you get a raise, you could trip that or trigger that. However, the exemptions cover probably 90% of the people in this room, if not more. But one of them is due to a CBA, a contract increase. If you have a contract increase that causes your salary to rise over these anti-spiking limits, you'll be exempt. You'll be all set. A bona fide job change, if you get a promotion in that last 3 years or the last 5 years, and it causes your salary to go up more than that 10%, then you'll be exempt. You'll be all set. Increase in hours, but not overtime, right? So overtime doesn't count towards your pension. Everybody should get that straight now. We have that discussion every single day. But an increase in hours for your job, which gives you more money but is not considered overtime, you'll be exempt from anti-spiking. In the overtime pay, it's in the statute, but it doesn't, as I just said, it doesn't apply to your pension final average salary anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And the two last ones don't affect really that many people, but a salary increase specified by a law or a statute, which is more of appointed or elected officials, and teachers. If there's any teachers in the room, certain aspects of the teaching, coaching and stuff like that added on doesn't cause that anti-spiking to hit. So the exemptions are pretty wide-ranging, so I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. The remedies for a violation of the anti-spiking Under Section 14, that 100% one is we use a 5-year average, which is more reasonable in terms of your career. And under Section 18, with the 10% increase, we add 10% every year, and anything over that 10%, we don't use for that average salary, and we refund any contribution that you've given towards that amount. So you do get 10% each year, so it's not all that bad. And the good news is you make more money. The bad news is it may not count fully towards your pension, so save your pennies. And under the category of more good news, as Tim mentioned, the vacation buybacks, how many people are eligible to buy it back in the room? So if you're buying it back every year, and it's a contractual, as a part of your contract, you're allowed to buy it back, then those are near and dear to everyone coming on the other side of retirement when you retire. The reason that I even bring it up, it's complicated, but it's also, in my opinion, it may not be around much longer. There's two cases actually pending, one in Superior Court and one in the Supreme Judicial Court that could very well do away with the vacation buybacks. One of them is basically the member had bought back his vacation time for years. The difference is he bought it under a contract which said he can't count it towards his pension. It's not regular compensation. It was spelled out in huge red letters that this is not pensionable. And the day he retired, he wanted it included, of course. So the retirement board, not us, said no, and now it's making its way through the courts. But the pension system, as everybody knows, is under attack anyways, public pension. So this is one more example that may go by the wayside. So I don't see it happening in the next week, but it could happen in the next few months. There's a case in November that could, if they read it broadly enough, it could affect vacation buybacks. Now, the good news part of that, and I'll just say this, normally or usually, when something comes down from a case such as wide-ranging as a vacation buyback issue, which affects a lot of people, PERAC, they're the regulators of the retirement boards, will basically agree, we'll have a big meeting and do all kinds of machinations, but we'll have it from the date of that decision forward. So a lot of people in the room might be safe, quote unquote, for vacation buybacks, but some may not. So we'll just put it on your radar. If you do rely on that for your planning, you may want to have a plan that kind of cuts back a little bit on that. But I don't see it happening very soon, but I just wanted to mention it in case you came up to the retirement board and we're counting on that 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever people are allowed to buy towards your financial planning. The other thing, just briefly, with the anti-spiking, a lot of people think just because you can buy your vacation buyback, you can buy your vacation time back, that anti-spiking doesn't apply to it. It actually does. So it's two different streams, but you just have to be aware of both of them. But we can go over it. If it's an issue in anyone's pension, we can always go over it with you at length if you want. Eliza just showed me just some sophisticated math that goes on, and I thought I was right, but she corrected me in one of the anti-spiking calculations. It's not as easy as you think, so it's not all or nothing. So I thank Eliza for pointing me in the right direction for that. And just one last thing, the paperwork that Tim mentioned, your enrollment forms, your option D forms, your birth certificates, all of that stuff has to be on file with the retirement board in case something happens. A lot of times, unfortunately, people will die while they're still active employees, and they thought, or somebody thought, that a beneficiary form had been filed with the retirement board. I just had one about 2 weeks ago. The woman died, unfortunately, and one of her children brought in an option D form, but it was not on file before she died. So they're out of luck, quite frankly. It has to be on file with the board. So
That's a good
check your
point,
file.
Clark. Not with your departments either. A lot of people will file it with their personnel officers. We need it at the board. If it's not at the board, you're not going to get the benefit. and I should have mentioned about option Ds, you can change that any time. So for instance, right now, my 15-year-old daughter Catherine is my D. She was fighting with her mother this morning on the way to school, so I might change that when I get upstairs. And I have 2 other kids I might go to, so we'll see. Yes, yes, ma'am? That's a great question, and you have to be strategic about option Ds. The question was, if you have your husband as option D and you die contemporaneously, right, die together, what happens? Unfortunately, it dies with your husband. However, if you know you're going to travel, and I ask this question, when I retire somebody, I ask, are you going to get on a plane or get on a ship and travel between now and your pension date? I'll advise that they consider an option D to a child or a loved one, somebody else, just in the event that you go together. And even if you didn't go together, the spouse isn't disenfranchised because there's what's called the spousal trump. What happens is a spouse can walk in the retirement board and basically say, I don't care what Joe put on the option D, I'm the spouse. We were married for at least 1 year. The employee has at least 2 years of service, and we were living together at the time of death. If they satisfy those prerequisites, or living apart for justifiable cause, which is a rarity, but it happens. If you satisfy those prerequisites, the spouse can trump whomever is on the D. So in my case, my wife can come in and say, I don't care that Catherine's on there, I want it. So to answer your question, in that case, if you have your husband down as a D and you pass together, it's over.
After this morning, Timmy, she just might do that.
Yeah, she might.
But again, it doesn't happen all that often, and as Frank would tell you, Doug Flutie, people of a certain age in this room remember who Doug Flutie was, or is. His parents died on the same day. So it does happen, and it is a good idea to put one of the kids, unlike, like Timmy, maybe one that you like more at that moment. And I'll be honest, if it's a choice usually between a daughter and a son, people will always put the daughter, which doesn't speak well for us, but because in almost 100% of the time, they'll say, because I trust her to split it. I don't trust him. So we can't split them either. There was another case pending where an option D was try to split it between several beneficiaries, but the law only allows one. So you can only choose one. Choose the one you trust. Choose the one, if you want to split between the kids. That's not what the retirement board will do. We'll pay to one, and that one gets taxed, and that one has to deal with it. And when that one, unfortunately, when that person dies, that benefit dies with them, so.
And back to the spousal trump, if we'll give the spouse the opportunity to elect a D, and if he or she doesn't do that, he or she loses. So if the benefit goes to Catherine, for instance, and my wife doesn't step forward, we'll give her, I think it's 30 or 60 days, then it's Catherine's for life. And my wife can't get buyer's remorse 5 years down the road. She gets that one shot. No. Spouse or former spouse who hasn't remarried.
Or mother, father, sister, brother, or kids.
Yeah. It's a very restricted class. No.
No. Same sex is fine, marriage, but not domestic partners. No common law marriage in Massachusetts.
Yeah, no common law marriage.
Yes, sir.
Adopted,
Officially adopted.
right.
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either, but I'll double check that.
No, it has to be official court adoption. Yes, sir.
On the vacation buyback, when this decision comes down, is it going to be retroactively applied?
Let me grab that. Huh? Let me grab that one.
You?
Does that mean that this past February, that's going to count one's loan? Or does it mean it rolls back the entire 3 years?
So I'm just going to repeat the question because we're being recorded. And if I misstate it, please speak up. The question was, if the annual unused vacation and personal days goes away, will it have a retroactive application? I don't know. I would argue against that. Our position would be, if anything, it should be prospective. We don't make the rules. But just speaking from Boston's point of view, we've been doing this since, I think, 2001. Is that right, Sandy? 2001, we've been retiring people with this benefit. If they told me it's retroactive, we'd have to go back and recalculate all those pensions that had it, and then presumably collect money that's owed. So it would be a logistical nightmare for us. So just purely selfishly, I hope it is prospective.
And does filing Form D have any implications on your choice of A, B, and C when you do retire?
Great question. No. Option D is strictly pre-retirement, and it expires once you retire. Yes, sir.
What happens, union contracts are pretty good. What if you retire before there's been a contract settled and there's a retro? How does that?
So the question is, union contracts are being negotiated. What happens if you retire before the settlement? It happens quite often, and we will recalculate the benefit. And unfortunately, there may be a delay, though. You know, they may take time, but we will recalculate the benefit. If you choose C, it's whatever you elect, A, B, or C. And I should have mentioned option C, on average, because it's based on actuarial tables, is 10 to 12% less than A. It depends on the age of your beneficiary. Correct. C is a lifetime benefit. Yes, ma'am? Sick time has never been regular comp. Yes, ma'am? Not that I'm aware of, ma'am. No. Yes? No, not that I'm aware of. Yes, sir?
Under option C, said you could, I could pick my daughter or my wife. Obviously, my daughter's much younger than my wife. I hope so, unless I'm with you guys from conception. Would there be a difference in the amount because she's younger?
Yes. So there's option C factor tables, and Sandy, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but in essence, what they do is they figure out, we're going to pay that pension so many years longer than had we paid it to your wife. You know, actuarially, your daughter's going to live, say, an extra 30, 40, maybe even 50 years longer. So they have to spread out the cost of the pension over those years. Go ahead.
So, and the option C factors, if you're retired in 65 and your spouse is 65, the option C factor, the difference between the A and C is about 11.5%. If you're 65 and your daughter was 35, instead of it being 11%, it could be 25 to 30% difference. So we've had spouses that there's been wide variety of ages. So you get sticker shock when you come in to retire. So the option C factor, we've had spouses that are 20, 30 years different. So that's why we tell you to come in 2 years ahead of time so you don't get sticker shock the day you retire. Before you retire, so you get a complete financial makeup. I think Tim talked about making sure your employment record is in place, but also having the birth record, so you know your options in your option C factor.
You can come up to 816 and sit with any member service rep. Yes. Yes, sir.
Tim, earlier you said that once you select your option, nothing can be changed after retirement. If your spouse should pass, doesn't that bump back up?
Great question. If you choose option C and your option C beneficiary predeceases you, you automatically bump up to option A. But you can't pick B, or that it goes right to A. Anything else? Well, we'll stick by the rail here. If you have some private questions you want to ask, we'll be here as long as it takes. And I appreciate everybody for spending time with us.
We also have a sign-in sheet if they want an appointment.
And if you want to make an appointment, there is a sign-in sheet. Thanks, guys.